Hey guys, so today I have a tag video for you. Both Les and I were tagged by Jessie the Reader to do the childhood book tag. This was originally done by Kucher Loves Books. All of the links are in the doobly-doo to those people. I have a lot of exciting questions and a lot of books to show you, so yeah, let's get to it. So I actually talked to my mother about this to I remembered some of them, but I figured that she would remember better what we had read a lot when I was a kid. And so yeah, I went a little crazy with the question. The first one is The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Remember these books? Yeah, apparently I really liked this one. The next one is Catch the Baby. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this book, I just remember really liking it. Third one is The House of Seven Colors, which is a Sesame Street book, and I loved this one because each of the rooms had a different color scheme and like a different sort of style to them. So obviously this was like the purple room, and yeah, I just loved going through and seeing all the different rooms on this one. My mother claims that I actually liked this one better, Early Bird on Sesame Street, when I was little. I don't know why, but she says we read this one the most of all like the Sesame Street themed books that we had. This one, The Wide Mouth Frog, is a pop-up book, and yeah, like what kid isn't gonna love a pop-up book like this? And finally, and probably pretty normally, is the Mother Goose tales. They're really short. It had actually some pretty disturbing rhymes in there. I was looking through the book and I was like, damn, people read this to their kids? That's my long-winded answer to the first question. There isn't a singular moment that stands out to me. I just remember that every night before I go to bed, my mom and I would read a book. At a certain point, it was me reading the books to her. The first is Holes, which I definitely talked about before. This is the first book that I ever reread. I am not a big rereader. I'm trying to make myself do it a bit more now because there are books that I want to go back and reread that I sort of read as a child and feel like I would have a different perspective on them if I read them now. But Holes I read I think 3 times by the time I was in 3rd grade, and I absolutely loved this book. It's so good. I mean, I think even now I would like it. I would just probably wouldn't enjoy it to the same extent just because I am a bit older. Next, of course, is the Harry Potter series, and I can include this in my childhood favorites because I started reading Harry Potter when I was 8. I was 8 in 2000 when the 4th book came out, and that's when I got into the series, so this was definitely a big part of me reading as a kid. Third, I'm not sure how many people will remember these, but I feel like there's probably an audience of girls who did the Amelia notebook stories. They're really cool. Like, there would be the story that she would sort of draw pictures and make anecdotes everywhere, and I absolutely loved these. I thought they were so cool. I have a whole stack that are actually in a different bookshelf in my sister's room, but yeah, these were great. I love these so much. Another series that I read a bunch when I was younger is the Nancy Drew series. Once again, I was reading these when I was about 8, so I can sort of include them in my childhood reads, but yeah, these books were really good. They're obviously written for a slightly older audience than 8, but these are the books that have stood the test of time and are still pretty popular now. And they're still quite good, too. And then lastly, I'm sure an American girl will remember these. I'm not sure about everyone else in the world, so sorry to sort of exclude you guys, but the American Girl stories. This is a collection, so this is a bunch of the stories, all of Kirsten's stories in one. Now, for those of you who don't know about American Girl dolls, there's basically a doll that had something to do with some time in American history. So Kirsten was an immigrant from Sweden, and she was settling in the Midwest with her family, and so it was like the story of having to resettle and live somewhere in America in like the mid 1800s, and so these are all her stories, and there were many dolls like this, and Kirsten was the first doll that I ever got, but I read a bunch of these books, not only Kirsten's, but a bunch of other ones as well, and so I feel like these deserve to be recognized in this question. I don't have a favorite character for each of the books, but I can say that Ginny is my favorite Harry Potter character. She is way more kick-ass in the books than she ever was represented in the movies, which is unfortunate. And then for the American Girl stories, it's pretty much whoever the main character was, whatever the doll was, so obviously Kirsten was my favorite character from those. I also had the Kit doll, so I had the Kit stories as well, so Kit was my favorite. And for Nancy Drew, I don't feel like I had a favorite character. I mean, Nancy was pretty cool, but she had some friends too, so it's hard for me to really remember which one was my favorite. For Harry Potter, I sort of gonna cheat here and say that though I did start reading it when I was 8, I didn't finish till I was 15, but Deathly Hallows is definitely my favorite of the books. It's just, there's so much that happens, and it's just so grand and epic that it definitely deserves to be my favorite. The Amelia books, Dr. Amelia's Boredom Survival Guide was probably my favorite. I don't really remember, I just flipped through the covers and remembered this one more than the other ones, so I feel like I probably perused this a lot more, but it was just fun ideas to keep yourself from being bored, and I just loved flipping through it on random occasions. Of the Nancy Drew stories, I feel like The Hidden Staircase was probably my favorite. I just found it really creepy and spooky and sort of like that tingle down your spine sort of feeling, especially when you're sort of a younger kid and you're reading these books. It's really suspenseful. Finally, for the American Girl stories, here's my Kit's special story collection, but I really liked the ones wherever the American Girl saves the day, just because it was normally a situation where it was very different from them. Like Kit runs into some trouble with a hobo because she lives in the Depression in the 1930s. That's sort of an uncomfortable situation that they have to deal with, and I think it was really cool because it was sort of dangerous and a little more intense than the stories normally were. Well, when I was little, one of my neighbors across the street, we would often pretend to be Harry Potter characters. My mom's university robe that she graduated in, I would wear that like my cloak, and my friend had a cloak that her mother had sewed for her, and so we would often play Harry Potter in the basement, and I was usually Ginny. I think one time I was Cho Chang, just because we had a bunch of girls playing and it was sort of like everybody had to be a girl character and there wasn't really enough to go around, so I ended up being Cho Chang, who was actually my least favorite character in the series, but anyway. And then I also previously, this past Halloween, went to a Harry Potter party and dressed up as Luna Lovegood. So yeah, Harry Potter characters I have dressed up as before. Holes, I remember I went to see it in theaters with one of my old childhood best friends, and I really liked it in the theaters. I even had the soundtrack, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, pretty sure I had the soundtrack, and it was a really good movie. I don't particularly remember how it holds up to the book, but I liked it so much I know I have the DVD somewhere, so I definitely liked it enough to buy it. There has been a recent adaptation of a Nancy Drew story, and it's starring Emma Roberts, and I feel like they made it a little bit young. They made it younger for a younger audience than the Nancy Drew books are really made to be. I always pictured Nancy as being like late high school age, and I feel like in the books they had her more middle school, but I definitely didn't like that movie adaptation. Obviously the Harry Potter series were made into movies. In terms of Deathly Hallows being my favorite book compared to the movie, I love Deathly Hallows Part 1. I think it's fantastic. Deathly Hallows Part 2 is good as long as you don't compare it too harshly to how the story ended up. There's some big changes there, but Deathly Hallows Part 1 is definitely a fantastic interpretation of the book. Part 2, eh. Other than Harry Potter, I haven't reread any of my childhood series now that I am a 20-year-old, but I do have some plans to reread 2 of the series that I read when I was younger. The first is the His Dark Materials series. I have all 3 books now, and I plan on rereading them. I first read them when I was in elementary school. I know that I read The Amber Spyglass when I was in 5th grade, so I must have read the other ones before then. Hence me rereading them now, because I feel like I will be able to appreciate them on a different level. And the other books that I plan on rereading is the Chronicles of Narnia series. I have a box set which you guys would have seen in my part 3 of my bookshelf tour, but yeah, I plan on rereading these now. I read them when I was in 4th grade, and even though they were made for younger kids, I really do want to reread them. So that concludes my answer to the childhood book tag. when I was tagged by Jesse, I feel like he tagged a bunch of other people, so I'm not completely sure who hasn't been tagged yet, but I will tag Alicia from Alicia Reads, Heather from Heather's Book Reviews, and Angelica of Angelica M 2009. Thank you guys so much for watching. If any of these books sort of reignited memories of reading as a kid, feel free to leave comments below about them. It's kind of fun to be like, oh yeah, I remember that book when I was little. And of course, all our links are in the doobly-doo as well for our Twitter and our Goodreads and so on. So yeah, thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you guys later.